That was fantastic to hear from you. So we're now going to go back to the original agenda. And I'd like to hand over to Andy for the welcome and introductions.
I can follow that. Welcome to start with. So a big welcome to everybody. So my name's Andy Slater. I'm the Group Director at Activate Learning. I'm also head of this campus here, our technology campus, here at Blackbird Leeds. I'm also head up our Banbury campus as well, and head up a lot of the stuff into inclusion and employment engagement in Oxfordshire. So it's a big welcome to this campus. As you see, it's a nice new building. We secured funding to secure this building, and it's great to have you here. And I was saying to Emma, you know, at any point we welcome you back. So just want to give you a bit of an overview who Activate Learning are, because I know that time is quite precious. So it's important that, you know, you give time to the guest speakers here today. So it's just a big welcome. So Activate Learning is born out of a number of mergers. So we actually run all the way down from Banbury in the north, all the way down through Oxfordshire into Berkshire. So, and then along the M4 corridor and down into Surrey. So we're a group of colleges with schools as well. We do have a multi-academy trust. So the UTC in Oxfordshire at Didcot is one of ours as part of our group. So we've grown quite significantly. Predominantly 16 to 18-year-olds, working with number of learners. We also do 14 to 16, but we also go lots of adults. So we do lots of inclusion work. And my colleague at the back, Rebecca, who works very closely, I know she works closely with a lot of people in the room, working with the programs with the unemployed and inclusion programs. Just pop the next slide up. Key to it are the people in the room, really, the people that make things happen. So these are a number of employers that we work with, and they are the people that open the doors for our young people and adults to gain employment. And I think that's really important. And I think for asylum seekers and refugees, about opening those barriers for those people to have the opportunity to find employment. And we're really keen to work with everybody in the room to how we can support that as well through training, education, and partnerships. So an example really is where we've been working locally here with the Oxford Hub. I don't know how many people in the room. I know Alex has done some work around with the Oxford Hub. There's a community group here where we've engaged with lots of different partnerships with local community, be it artwork or counselling, and working to try and engage people in the community to be part of us, part of Activate Learning, feeling they are part of a community. You know, and we want to be part of the local community here to engage with those people. So, you know, these are just some small stats. We've done sort of 20 courses in the last just over 12 months and really got lots of engagement, lots of traction, and lots of enjoyment for people, and that's really important. So, and they'll go to strength to strength. And this is one we've done recently, which was for African families in the UK, which was funded and supported and run off this campus. So one of the things we want to try and do is to engage with lots of people like yourselves in the room, to use this facility to engage with the local community, to raise the profile and the of education, to bring those young people and adults into education, give them the training they need to make the next steps and undo those barriers which sometimes are put in front of them. So it's a big welcome from me. Enjoy the rest of the morning, and if you've got any questions, please ask me, you know, as the morning goes on. But thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone for being here today. And I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of the Oxfordshire Inclusive Economy Partnership. So next slide, please. Next one. So the partnership was established a couple of years ago. We bring together public, private and third sector organisations, and the key principles of our partnership are around reducing inequality, creating opportunities and creating benefits for communities and citizens, and that's across the whole county. We have 4 key areas of focus. So social value and procurement. So how do we ensure that we get the greatest amount of social value through procurement processes, and that social value is targeted at the communities that need it the most. Place shaping. So are we looking at projects in the areas that need it the most, and are we using our resources to the best that we could? Education attainment. So that's focusing on sort of school readiness up to 16. and then employment, inclusive employment, which is why we're here today. So the Inclusive Employment Working Group looks at the barriers that people face to getting into employment, as well as the barriers that employers face to employing people. And one of the cohorts we've chosen to focus on this year is around supporting refugees into employment. This is our second HR Network event. Our first one was back in July last year, and that was focusing on supporting prison leavers into employment. This is really an opportunity for us to share information around these key topics around inclusive recruitment, for people to get together, hear from other relevant organisations, opportunity to network with fellow peers. And these are just a few things about why inclusive recruitment is really important. You know, it's a vital element of anyone's organisational diversity and inclusion strategy. It's about creating those opportunities for individuals, and also how it can be beneficial for the employer. You know, it increases retention and recruitment and maximises an innovative workforce. You know, and also creating an edge over your competitors, making yourself an employer of choice. Next slide, please. At the beginning of last year, we launched our charter, which is a way for organisations to show their commitment to creating a more inclusive Oxfordshire through a set of pledges around 6 key areas around improving training and educational attainment, recruiting inclusively, offering opportunities into work, supporting local and social economy, providing fair wages, and how can we share resources, skills and assets better. We have over 80 organisations who've signed the charter so far. Some of you are in the room, happy to see you all. And we would love to have more people sign up to help really drive forward that inclusive economy across the county. So please do feel free to come and speak to me afterwards. I'd be happy to talk you through the process. And we've got a fantastic agenda for you today. So we're going to be hearing from Aspire and their Refugee Employment Support Programme. We're going to be hearing from Lucy about the NHS experience. We've heard from Christine and Sarwan. And so now I'd like to hand over to John for, Lucy. That slide was wrong. Over to Lucy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And firstly, thank you for inviting me today. I'm really sort of honoured to be here. So my name's Lucy Constant, and I'm strategy lead for nursing, midwifery, AHP recruitment and retention. We love our long job titles in the NHS. Anyway, I lead very heavily on international nurse recruitment, and we had an opportunity to support through a displaced talent programme that the NHS has set up across the country to support displaced nurses from countries to come and work in the UK. It was really, it was a great opportunity to be part of. We originally wanted to be part of as a pilot to support this programme, but because we were such an expensive place to live, that was one of the biggest hurdles for us to invite some nurses that were coming from a country that were going to come ultimately to work as senior healthcare support workers, and then for us to then support them through to become a nurse in the UK. So we missed out on a few pilots, and then this was the last pilot that the NHS were doing. And we had huge support from our executive team that they really wanted us to do this programme. So we, in conjunction with NHS England and NHS Professionals, who are a recruitment agency that support recruiting international nurses, and another company called Talent Beyond Boundaries. I'm not sure if you are aware of that company. We put in a bid, and we were successful to support a number of nurses. So we were looking to recruit about 6 of these nurses, and all were coming from Lebanon and had been displaced from Palestine. So a very kind of a hot topic at the moment, but it was a great opportunity to be able to support refugees as such to come into a trust and actually really help them through to become a nurse. So we're still very early on in our journey with this programme, but ultimately, and I'm sorry, I'm looking over here, the aim that the NHS were really trying to achieve was to integrate to obviously increase our nurses within the UK, and there was a big push for the 50k programme, which I'm not sure you're aware of, but partly that was a huge drive for international nurses, but really to explore other countries, to see whether we could recruit from other countries to support other nurses come to the UK, but also to help us to achieve the number of nurses that we were looking to recruit to as well. So a bit of a two-pronged attack, but it was felt like a really good ethical project to be part of. So the overview really was to, working with NHS professionals, was to identify suitable candidates to then come over, be supported through their English language training, and there was a dedicated programme delivered by John Moores University to support the nurses with their OET, and that's a factor that they have to have before they can then go through to become a registered nurse in the UK and go through the different NMC processes. Part of that as well was working with the IOM, which was all about how do we integrate these specific new staff members into working and living in the UK. And that has been a real support both to us as an employer welcoming those individuals, but also for those individuals to have access to that as they came into the UK as well. So we interviewed probably about 10 suitable candidates, and we offered six candidates an opportunity to come and work in Oxford. One of the things that, and I think Christine mentioned, obviously, cost of living, and I'm basically going to reiterate what you said, Christine, all the barriers that we kind of wanted to make sure that we were kind of overcoming. Because we've done such large amounts of international recruitment, we've recruited about 1,500 nurses over the last 6 years coming from all over the world. It felt like we were kind of good at this. We knew what we were doing. We knew what to expect. But I think for this, we were looking at 6 nurses, and it felt like a really big challenge. It was, what were we expecting? What did we need to set their expectations? It just felt like it was going to be different because we needed to, what support were we going to need to give these individuals? Where were they coming from? So we did a lot of kind of pre-meets with these candidates virtually. And again, that was quite difficult because there was the English barrier. They were working still as nurses in their home countries. So again, it was trying to get access to them and getting them to ask the right questions. But we had great engagement from our staff. Our matrons would join the call, and we would try to have these regular communications with these individuals. The key thing was about cost of living, because although I've mentioned it at the beginning, it is a real big, it's a reality that we have to face. And there was nothing worse than inviting people to come and work within your organisation for them to then struggle. And because they would be initially working as a senior healthcare support worker, their salary wasn't going to be the same as a nurse. And it was, realistically, we're looking at a 12 to 18 month programme before they're going to be able to apply for their NMC and become nurses. So there's a real reality there. And also, I think the IOM training really helped us to get that insight into saying, well, actually, these individuals, their priority is family. So we had 6 nurses that wanted to bring their family over as quickly as possible. And actually, we can provide staff accommodation, which is single staff accommodation, but we can't accommodate for a family of 4. And then if you're looking at renting a place for a family of 4, it's expensive. And actually on that salary, you know, is that realistic? So a lot of our conversation, and in line with sort of Talent Beyond Boundaries and NHS professionals, we were really stressing the fact of what reality was coming and working in the UK and living in Oxfordshire. And actually, one of those nurses did decide that it wasn't quite right for them, and actually I was kind of relieved that actually they'd taken that on board and made that decision. But I think there's something about being really transparent and making sure that those nurses are making that decision and not feeling pressurised to come over to come and work for us. One of the benefits of the programme was that we could support them on a health and care social visa, service care visa, which is obviously different to the refugee visa. So it was it was a lot easier to process these individuals to come over and join us, but again, they're going to be limited on what funds they're going to have access to. And again, looking at how do they tap into local accommodation and things like that, the benefits are limited on that visa that they're coming over to as well. So we were able to provide staff accommodation, which is single staff accommodation, and they're able to stay there for up to a year. And then we are going to be supporting them through the OET program, which is an English language program. So when they arrived, they arrived, I think, about 6 weeks ago now, and we've got 4 nurses. Actually, 5 arrived, and sadly, one of the nurses felt that they had some problems back at home, and they just felt it was too much to be here. So sadly, they've already returned home. But again, it's just making sure that we had the right support network for these individuals, so that they had that communication with us, and that we could support them with that. It's been quite an interesting program, and as I say, because we're so sort of, I feel, quite seasoned with welcoming our international colleagues, it's been quite a challenge. And I think there's been, initially from our staff, was we allocated them to our emergency department, trauma department, and neuro departments. And I think some of our colleagues were a bit concerned of, well, if they're coming into trauma, where are they coming from? Is this going to be too traumatic for them? And speaking to our peers that had previously had cohorts, they really talked about a lot of resilience of people coming from another country where they are having troubles there. And I think that resilience was really interesting to kind of be aware of. And I think some of our concerns probably were not the same concerns as the nurses that came to us. I think we've had to be very, very supportive. So I've been in contact with these individuals non-stop. We were there to meet them into their accommodation. Again, the accommodation, there was concerns. It wasn't kind of what they were expecting, and I think they wanted something different. So again, it was navigating that. We provided a huge food pack for them all as before they arrived, and trying to sort of provide them with food. We also arranged bank accounts. So again, Saju's here today from HSBC, and again, normally it's a very seamless process, and we'd spoken a few months prior to say, well, they've got passports, there shouldn't be a problem. But actually, when it came to opening the bank account, because of the country they'd come from, there were delays there. So again, it's overcoming that hurdle, because again, we want to make sure they've got access to funds quite quickly. So it's just been little things that have been kind of a challenge, but again, trying to make sure we're supporting these individuals. And I think it's that expectation. I think if we were to go back sort of 6 months ago when we were planning this, I think it's about our expectation, but also understanding the nurses' expectations. Where are they coming from? What sort of wards are they coming? What hospitals are they working in? So that we can really support them better as they come in. I think the language barrier has been a hurdle as well, but we're giving them, as I say, they're doing the English language training, and already within the few weeks that I've been meeting them, their English has improved no end. I think culturally, they were all male nurses, and again, we put out sort of support for sort of to see if anybody would support locally and sort of show people around. But again, I think, you know, the male culture is quite different from Lebanon, and so again, that's been an interesting kind of dynamic that we've been working with them. But they've been absolutely delightful to meet and work with. But I think the next hurdles is around bringing their family over. How do we support them going forward? Moving them through to the NMC process, so getting their English language so that they then can apply to do their nursing training. And then hopefully they'll be able to earn more to then be able to bring in their families. But it's been a real privilege to be part of the programme, and I think we continue to learn with it. And I think, I think it has felt very different to our other international recruitment that we've done, but it has been a real kind of an opportunity to learn for us as an organisation of how we support these individuals. And as I say, I think the IOM sessions were really helpful, and to really give us a perspective on what to expect from these individuals and what their key drivers were. And I'm really hoping that the sessions that the nurses have done from their integration has been helpful as well. I think that resilience is there. I think the other thing was that actually these individuals all had family and friends already living and working in the UK, whereas I think our perception was they were literally coming from war-torn country and actually had nothing and were coming to Oxford with nothing. And actually, in fact, they were coming with contacts already here, with probably more insight than I thought they might have, and so on. So I think that's been quite a big learning for us at the Trust anyway. And I think at OUH we are dedicated to supporting individuals. We've looked at trying to support some of the refugees back when the Ukrainian situation happened, and we put on a day there, and we are continuing to try and support individuals into the workplace. We've got Shilpa here today as well from our widening participation team, which is actually really about how do we recruit and maintain local people that are looking to try and get into work. So I think this project has been, as I say, a real privilege to be part of. I think we've been lucky because we got funding as well, which has been able to support those individuals as well and to do the English language. But I think it's one of the biggest support was from the execs that really wanted us to drive this forward. And I think by getting that senior buy-in at that stage has been a real sort of benefit and bonus for us to be able to deliver this programme and to be able to support these individuals. So it's still early days, but I think it's been a great opportunity, and it will be interesting to see how we can really integrate these nurses into society in Oxford and hopefully bringing over their family soon as well. So, okay, thank you. I don't know if you...
Thank you very much, Lucy, for sharing your experiences, and hopefully please feel free to speak to Lucy afterwards. And now I'm going to hand over to John from Aspire, who's going to talk about the Refugee Employment Support Programme.
This is the low point.
And just to say, we will do some questions and answers at the end, so don't worry, there will be an opportunity to ask anything that you want to.
The first question is, do I need this? Oh, for the people on. Right. Okay. It's great to see some familiar faces. It's a joy, and also to meet some new people. Thanks for the invitation today. I actually come from the corporate world. I was in business for 40 years, and as such I was bullied by experts. Since then, when I retired 6 years ago, I joined Aspire as an ESOL, English language tutor. But since then, I think there's been a progression, and now the joy of the situation is that I'm working 5 days a week on the refugee programs that we have. My job title is actually Refugee Projects Manager, and I'm working at the moment on 4 or 5 different projects. And I thought today would be a good time to talk to you about a particular project that we're working on, sponsored, funded, commissioned by Oxford City Council, which is, click, the Refugee Employment Support Programme. We call it RESP because we love acronyms where we come from. What's RESP all about? Again, click please, yeah. It's a freestanding operation, so we do have a ETE part of Aspire, Aspire then being a specialist in employment, employability, also more recently housing. So we have, when people come into us from the refugee background, they go into one of 2 boxes, if you like. One is the general ETE, which is when they're not part of a particular cohort of people linked to a project. The other one is the bit that I look after, which is the actual specific projects. RESP itself then is what I would call the second iteration of the original SVPRS, the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Scheme. These people, it's a 15-month project, these people arrived in the UK, arrived in Oxford, 6 years ago, 5, 6 years ago? 2015, so 9 years ago, actually, yeah. And it was found that after all these years, they still were either not in work, or if they were in work, the work they had wasn't suited to their skills. their skills, their qualifications, their experience, and perhaps most important of all, their aspirations. So we were provided with a cohort of 20 individuals living in Oxford in this position, which you won't be surprised to hear suddenly became 53. And this was the general purpose of what we were talking about. I'm not going to read from the boards. I think that's boring. But if you can have a quick look yourself. Yes, please. So as far as the project is concerned, we have 4 different stakeholders in the system. One is Aspire. So we provide DigiSkills training, we supply self-employment training, and we do a thing called work-based ESOL. So I think you'll probably be familiar with what ESOL is. It's standard English language training for people. At Aspire, we don't do that. We do work-based ESOL. So we've developed a number of courses for these individuals based on the world of work. So that could be, for instance, more generally, living in the UK. It could be UK work culture. It could be CV preparation. It could be interview preparation. It could be the world of construction, self-employment, customer service, nursing. Then we have Asylum Welcome. Good to see Christine earlier. And they have mentoring services through a large number of volunteers in a sort of a buddy system, I suppose. We won't call it friends because it's not. We have EMBS, which is provider of English language services. And then finally, we have Refugee Resource, which is the trauma-related mental health service. So we're all working together to enable these people to come from where they are to where they want to be, and where we want them to be. Part of the process was to create, an important part of the process, actually, employer engagement. So what we did was we created a cohort of, we're aiming at as many as we can really, but at the moment we're sitting at 36 local employers, 31 different sectors. And when I introduce myself to these people, I actually sit down with them and talk with them. So it's not always possible to go and see them because of their own occupations, but more often than not, we actually meet and we talk about what they can do, what they can provide in terms of services, what they can provide in terms of allowing these people. What Alan would say is that, yes, we have the ultimate objective of getting people into work, but the journey into work is perhaps as important, if not more important, than actually getting them there in the first place. These people have been individually living between these 4 walls for 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Getting them out into the big wide world, getting them to feel a little bit of social engagement, a little bit of comfort in their lives, feeling part of society is an enormous thing for these people because they've got used so much to living in this little box. It's a challenge. So when we talk about engagement with employers, we're talking about a ladder of activities. It could start with just going for a walk with them around Farmore Reservoir or Blenheim Palace. It could be a number of social activities, getting them involved in baking a cake or something like that, whatever it may be. In terms of the employer, what do we do to help these people along? What can the employer do and what can we assist the employer in doing? So one is, as I said, work-based ESOL. We could do site visits, just come and see what an Oxford company looks like, a British company looks like. Make a visit. Volunteering opportunities, work shadowing, work experience, a general idea of what work culture looks like where we are. Something that's very familiar to us, but not necessarily to them. So these are the work-based ESOL. I think I mentioned them earlier. I won't go on. I didn't realize this slide was here, actually. So results to date. What have we done? It's a 15-month project. We're just about to complete the 3rd quarter, which is 9 months, 6 months to go. So we're getting towards the sharp end of the program. Employer engagement with participants. Yes, we're involved in the ladder activities, getting them involved with meeting employers, getting used to the idea of work readiness so that they do feel more included. The recruitment process has actually started as well. So as we move forward, we get to, as I say, the sharp end of this. We're getting more and more involved with employers. relationships with the employers, I keep on getting in touch saying, you haven't heard from us for a few months. It doesn't mean to say we've forgotten you. But to give you an idea of what we're a kind of a dating agency. You know, we've got these individuals who've got skills, they've got experience, they've got aspirations, and then we've got organizations out there, businesses such as yours. It's meeting those two, putting those two things together, mixing and matching. And then finally, there's a particular Aspire program which we have, which is once these people are in work, it can be quite difficult for individuals to join the workplace and feel as comfortable as they might feel. So we have this thing we call in-work support. It's a 6-month program. And it's really to flatten out the bumps in the road. You know, you've got a person from, let's say, Syria, and the person has started work. It doesn't necessarily mean that they understand how the workplace works. The primary relationship is still between the employer and the employee. But I'd like to think that we, in an elegant way, I suppose, a discreet way, we triangulate with those two people to make sure that everything crops up that may be of a problem that wouldn't be a problem for us but be a problem to them, we can quietly iron out. Have a little word with the employer, have a little word with the employee. Is everything okay? Maybe, may not be, but that's what we do in order to make sure that at least that first 6 months is comfortable, it works as well as it possibly can do. That, I think, was it. Was it? Yeah. That was it. So that's what we're doing. It's boots on the ground. It's where we are. We're working with 23 people at the moment. And we're looking to get more people on board, actually. We're looking to speak with more organizations so we can grow that 36 to a larger number. That's really a short and sweet view of what we're doing. It's a trigger for you guys to come and see me at some point later to say, we're interested. We'll meet up. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, John. So yeah, it's really now an opportunity for people to ask any questions of our speakers today. So happy to take any questions if you have any. Please put your hand up and I'll bring a mic over to you. Don't be shy.
Oh, I'm Alex Betts from the University of Oxford. I just had a comment for Lucy and a question to John, if that's okay. Lucy, the Refugee Studies Centre at the University of Oxford has done an impact evaluation with Talent Beyond Boundaries of the first foundation trust in the UK that set up a similar scheme, the Mersey Care Foundation Trust on Merseyside. They had a larger cohort of nurses, also coming from Lebanon, also Palestinian. And we followed them over time, baseline, midline, endline, but also looked at the impact on their families, looked at the impact on the NHS Foundation Trust. We did that from 2022 when it was first implemented, and we've just finished the study. So if you're not aware of that, we should probably share that. And John, I was wondering, what's the limiting factor for you on being able to do that matching? Is it your capacity? Is it limits on the employer demand side? Is it building the capacity of those employers? Or is it on the supply side in terms of going through those activity stages to enable refugees and asylum seekers to be employment ready? What needs to happen to be able to scale to support a larger number of people into work?
Yeah. The answer in short to you is that resource is always an issue, of course it is, and resource means funding. So it always comes back to money, actually. In terms of identifying the people, these people are normally presented to us in the form of cohorts of people. That could be, for example, Syrians. It could be Ukrainians. It could be Afghans, hot topic, and to a more recent extent, probably Hong Kongers as well. The process is that we have to make a profile of these individuals first and foremost. So we have to understand who they are, what they want to do, understand what their concerns are and what their needs are. At that point then, we have the resource to do that within its funded limits, if you like. And then from that point onwards, we go on to say, right then, we're going our dating agency bit. We're coming back to that again, I think, where we know what the employers can do, we know what these people want. There is no limiting factor in that respect. It's just that we can only deal with so many numbers at a given time. Of course we want to be all things to all men, but in a way, by doing that, you're planning to fail as well, because it's just not feasible. Does that to some degree answer your question? Thank you.
Thank you.
I think two things. One probably for you, Christina. I just wanted to ask in terms of the demand. I'm sure there's much more demand. We heard about 2 specific programs. How are you meeting the demand versus the need of these people, kind of getting back to employment, kind of?
So
thing.
sorry, your question is about demand from clients at asylum.
Yes,
welcome
yes. So
home.
in terms of the number of asylum seekers or refugees you have in Oxfordshire versus, we heard 2 specific programs, but I guess you're dealing with many more clients, and how are you coping with that, or what are the challenges with that specifically? And the second question, which I can come back later, I think it's a different topic, so yeah.
So in the last year and a half now, I think, Oxfordshire has become an area of dispersal for the Home Office for asylum seekers, which has, Alex has probably got a better handle on the numbers than I have, but it's, from an asylum welcome perspective, it's doubled at least the client load. And with the developments of how much longer it's taking for asylum seekers, it's not just waiting for people to get refugee status and support them into employment, but it's also trying to work with them while they're still in the process. So it has massively increased the workload and the demand. And I think what our barriers are, the things that I talked about before, is lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, which is why it's fantastic to have an event like this, and please keep being interested and keep spreading the word. There is a government-funded project. I'm going to confuse with acronyms now, because John talked about RESP, but there's REP, Refugee Employment Programme, I think, yeah. And Palladium have got the contract for the South East, and so we are now able to refer any clients who got refugee status in the last year and a half to them to get employment, integration, and language support. And we are trying really hard to work with them to give them the benefit of the knowledge that we have working with the clients, to enable them to be able to service the clients better, because the money doesn't always go where you would hope it would. So we're trying to bring them together a bit more. So that helps with that side of things. But it doesn't help. And then there are lots of funded projects by really good people at Oxford City Council. It's the stuff that's not funded, which is where the challenges are. And that tends to be with the asylum seekers, where we've had the huge boom in numbers in the last year. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Just
Actually, and there's one other thing. We are talking about employment today, but if I could just do the little education plug. The waiting list now for ESOL is 6 to 9 months to get accredited ESOL from any of the 3 main colleges, EMBS, Activate, Abingdon and Whitney. So I now, Activate, have a waiting list for the assessment to be able to know which class you're going into. And obviously it's very hard to get a job if your English isn't up to scratch. So an asylum seeker has to wait 6 months to be eligible for free ESOL, and then they have to wait another 6 months. So if people are asking, if they arrive today, they're lucky if they get into a class by September. And so we're getting a lot of people who have been sat in hotels waiting, and they're going through the streamlined questionnaire process. I won't go into all that. But they're actually getting status quicker than we anticipated. They're not ready. They've not been able to access classes. So
I think so. The second question was more education thing, and I think it was generally for the colleagues who are here from various colleges. I think they probably understand this issue of funding from the government for programs like Multiply, functional skills, where there is a requirement to be resident for 3 years from government. So somebody mentioned Hong Kong, and I think often their English is not bad. They're ready for employment, but they're not allowed to be getting onto that education ladder, and that is a challenge, I think, in terms of government not rethinking the policy. I don't know if anybody here want to comment on the from the college's perspective as well. So
Did you have anything that you'd like to add to that in terms of?
3-year residency requirement of apprenticeships, functional skills, multiply, any program that we want to put some of this people, it's a area, isn't it?
To be, yeah, absolutely. And to be fair, it's not. I think, Rebecca, would you have more idea in terms of that relationship, in terms of?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a challenge, and it's one that we struggle to be able to support because funding does come from government. So we're always looking for different funding opportunities through project funding. Pre-Brexit, we had European Social Fund, that's now gone as well. So there is the Shared Prosperity Fund, but that's gone to local councils. For skills, that's not up until 24-25, and some councils are using that more for capital funding rather than for actual teaching. So it's a real struggle. We're just about to come up for another curriculum reform that will see changes to our community funding and our non-accredited funding, which have been things that we have been able to tap into. That will become tailored learning. What we don't know yet, the paper will be released by government at the end of the month, is what that will look like and how we'll be able to take that community funding forward. As Andy said at the beginning of the talk, we're hoping that this centre becomes a centre that can really support the communities, and with those pre-ESOL classes, all of those. But I think, as John said, it comes down to cash and how we can fund that and support that. So,
Sorry, I'll just stand up again because otherwise I'm looking at the screen. I thought if you had refugee status, that 3-year residence requirement was waived. Is that being applied to? Because I did ask the question about multiply recently, but haven't got an answer yet. So, is that? Don't know.
yeah, so the multiply is different depending on where it's coming from in each of the local authorities. So we can have a little look at where that funding comes from. So the funding comes from different areas. So if it's coming from LEPs directly, they might have different rules around it. So we can have a little. I can pick it up with you for the nurses at the NHS.
No, I mean in general.
Yeah.
I mean we're working across for multiply funding.
Yeah.
And it's working for us
Yeah.
at the moment. We are using it for functional. We are using it for functional skills and to specifically for Excel, improving Excel skills in, and I think Oxfordshire County Council have kind of given the contract at the moment to a different college. So I think we're working in partnership with them. But I just wanted to just highlight a barrier in general, which government often doesn't help with these funding rules that are imposed by, and it is so confusing with
It's
so
really
many
confusing.
different pots of funding.
And I think with the curriculum reform that's coming, there'll be more changes. So everything you know now is probably about to change and become slightly different. So I think perhaps part of our job as a college is to keep business informed, let you know what we can do, how that funding's changed, and we'll certainly make sure we support you with that.
Yeah, I know. And we worked on programs together. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? Oh, Anne.
Hi. It's a question for John. Given you've got limited funding and you've probably got more people than you can handle, do you apply any selection criteria, or and if you do, what are they? In terms of you've got 40 people that you want to put on your programme, but you've only got 20 slots.
Actually, it's a little bit the other way around, in as much as on the projects side of things, we are presented with a cohort. So we actually have this number of people from a particular group, and with those people, then they're our working piece of clay, if you like.
And are they, I mean, how are they selected?
Alan?
I'm just wondering what the hurdles are, basically. If I'm a refugee, how do I get to there?
Okay, so it was really down to, we commissioned a piece of research which Asylum Welcome kindly did for us, and we identified these key cohort within the Syrian Vulnerable Persons Resettlement Programme. So they've been here the longest. And the concern was the fact, as John mentioned in his presentation, the fact that some of them hadn't found work that they aspired to, or they just lost their way, or just lost motivation. And we've sort of reacted to that rather late when we're supporting families resettling here in Oxford. And it's something as part of the learning curve that we've had. And so identifying those individuals, we arranged for an interpreter to go out and visit those particular individuals who've expressed an interest, and that's how they've come on board. So it's really about that key piece of research where we've identified those individuals. We've looked at what previous skills they've had as well, and those who have the most determination, who want to move on, then they have come forward. And we've still got another 30 in the waiting who are wanting to go through the process as well. But obviously it just depends how the existing 23 are managing through the process. But yes, this is limited funding. This funding has come through the Home Office grant funding, and it is limited for the 15-month programme. So it is set up as a pilot, and we're hoping that this may be growing to the wider cohort across the county. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I can see that. So it was basically a sort of one-off with a particular set of criteria, but making it more sustainable, you'd have to then embed those criteria or have some different ones in order for it to kind of just roll. Yeah,
because I mean we're very specific with the funding that we receive. So we can, we resettle families from through the Syrian programme, the United Kingdom resettlement programme, and the Afghan programme. So the funding that we receive is only for that particular cohort. Obviously we have a large number of Ukrainians in the county as well, I think circa 2,000, something like that. So obviously they need support as well. But they're all, Oxford has, I think it's about 50,000, no, it's a third of the population. So we've got a population of about 165,000 in the city. A third of that population are migrants, and some of them actually need that support. Okay, so the East Timorese community, they're a particular cohort who need help. So the idea of the REST project is about expanding that, and hopefully if we can get enough employers on board and maybe get sponsorships or something like that to help support this, then we can see this going forward.
Could I just add something to that as well? I think part of my role is to work with the City Council and the County Council to identify need. So, we have this project in place now. This is one of a number of projects we're working on with a number of different cohorts of individuals and different backgrounds. We don't sit there and wait for them to come to us and say, oh, we've got this, would you be interested? It's more like working with them, say, where is the need? Identifying the need, creating the project, delivering on the project, measuring the project, and then assessing the ROI on that project, because obviously it's taxpayers' money, so we have to be mindful of that. And my job is really to assist people like Alan in giving him support is how to spend his money.
Hi, James Gilpin from the Department for Work and Pensions. We've heard some really interesting stories about the challenge and reward of engaging with this group of people. Just an open question to all of the speakers, really. What is your top selling point to a new employer about why and how they should engage with this cohort of people?
We've got a bit of a captive market here, I think, actually. Due in no small part to you were instrumental in introducing us to people who were keen and had actually written, I think, they'd signed the pledge to say, we want to do this. In terms of responding to your question, I think it's a very vague notion, if you like, it's not specific, but it's really, you have people come here from a very different background. They're very different sets of living rules, if you like. It's a very unusual place for them to live. And the workplace is a fundamental part of them actually engaging in society generally. So as far as Aspire is concerned, I would say, as an employability and as an employment specialist, we would say, we understand your needs, let's get you into work. Or if not into work, let's get you along that road through that ladder I was talking about into the workplace. That's our USP, I guess. Does that partly answer your question?
I mean, I was very much hoping that it's just trying to articulate to employers that there's reward there. It's going to help them to address their skills shortages. That there is help out there. There are organisations who are there to support. People don't have to do it all on their own. So there's a good case for more employers to step forward and hold their hand up to get involved in the process, because there's self-interest there as well as doing the right thing.
It's a two-way street.
Sorry, can I just butt in on that? Because I've always got something to say, James, you know that. People are already here and they want to work, and there's a labour shortage. I don't think I can say it any clearer than that.
Yeah, if I can just add to that many of the families, when they arrive, they are so motivated. They want to have this opportunity to start their lives again and to make some roots here in the UK. And they want nothing more to actually have that employment opportunity. They have many different skills. They're not used to having application forms to fill in. They're not used to having interviews. It's mainly word of mouth is how they get their jobs, where they originally come from. And so I think it's a learning here is about how we can be a little bit more receptive, maybe also change the way we do our recruitment process, maybe look at how we're making it more inclusive, to open our doors to these people who've got skills. Maybe having them come and demonstrate their skills. If they've got a practical skill, we've got stonemasons who are so clever when they show us pictures of their work that's gone to Paris exhibitions. And it's just amazing to see the work that they've done. But how can you do that in an application? So sometimes I think we need to think about more widely how we can open those opportunities and how we can offer those practical chances.
Thank you. I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. My name is Saju and I work for HSBC. We are not an employer, but we came here because last time I participated in an event about expressing employability, and I found a fact that yes, we can talk about chance of employment, and if you don't have an access to the bank account, you are equally disadvantaged. So I just want to say that in a HSBC, the refugees always struggle with having sufficient documents to open an account. But we have a way around, and we help. My question, actually, I'm thanking you for explaining much about ARC, because I met an individual there 2 days ago. He had an ARC, but he did not have the work permit. So I wasn't sure what this card is all about, because we are used to the BRP card. We didn't know what it is, but it makes sense. But my question to you is, if somebody has an ARC card and they have the work permit, do they find it difficult to open a bank account?
Do you know, Sajid, I was going to make a beeline for you when this session finished. The amount, at the moment, it's really hit and miss. And apologies, because I'm going to probably offend some people, but what's written on websites isn't really the reality. And it's very much about the person that's behind the till at the branch that the person walks into.
Sense, yeah.
So sometimes it's a really positive experience, often it isn't. Yeah. So yes, if we could please talk, because there are lots of barriers. And then the other thing I didn't mention earlier is that the lucky asylum seekers get the ARC. As Sawan mentioned, and particularly when people first arrive at the hotel, they didn't have any paperwork. The Home Office can take quite a long time. So letters of support are something that other organisations like us can do to help fill in those gaps, but it's being open to that as well, because if someone says, I don't have the paperwork, it's not because they lost it or couldn't be bothered to keep it quite often. I mean, sometimes that's the case, you know, we're all forgetful, but yeah, so thank you.
Yeah,
you won't be able to leave the building before I've...
No, I mean, I'm based in Banbury. Actually, I personally actively support the individuals coming from the 2 hotels.
Oh, right, okay.
But if they are given the refugee status, they come straight to us, because there's a person in Cherwell District Council, and she's of Syrian background, and I have a relationship with her. She brings them, I meet Afghans, and it's a pleasant experience. But I just want to say we actively support the community initiatives. It's not the commerciality. It's actually we are active in Oxfordshire. We support, and then prisoner scheme. We are able to do some sessions for people. So we will be there to support you. We can actually support you. I'm very privileged to be part of NHS program. I closely work with Lucy. But of course, we met obstacles we never thought would be there. But it's not that it's not impossible. It is possible. Sometimes it takes time.
Can I just share a little story about my banking situation?
Yeah.
So when I got my ARC that had work permit on it, and in the process of looking for a job, I also wanted to open a bank account. So the first thing I went to HSBC in my area, and they said, we need proof of identity and proof of address.
Yeah.
And that's two things that I definitely don't have as an asylum seeker. So all I could give them is just my ARC card. And I said, that's all I have as an asylum seeker. And they were not convinced, though. They said, we can't give you. So I was so disappointed. And I went to Lloyd's. In Lloyd's, there was a staff member. She also refused to open a bank account for me. So I had to leave the whole matter to luck. And the next day I went, there was a different staff, and he opened it for me. And after that, after I got my Lloyd's bank, and I went to HSBC again, and I said, so Lloyd's gave me account, and I'm here to ask why you didn't give me. I opened it already in Lloyd's, and they said, well, now we definitely can give you because now you have a current account in Lloyd's.
With another bank, yeah, of course. Yeah, the risk is with them, so we can take that risk. Yeah, I understand. I do apologize for your experience. This is lack of awareness, right? This is lack of awareness. Like ARC, I wasn't sure, but there are ways. So I have my business card. I'll pass it to you.
Okay, one more question if anyone has one, otherwise we'll wrap up. Well, thank you very much to everyone for coming today. And firstly, I'd like to thank our speakers. Could we please give everyone them all a round of applause? And thank you to Activate Learning for hosting today. Really appreciate that, and fantastic to have all of you here. We have now, please go back upstairs to the room that we were originally in. There'll be light lunch, opportunity to network, and please do go and see our colleagues who have got stalls around the edge. They've got lots of interesting information to share with you all, so please do go and see them all. But thank you very much for coming.